UFC 315 in Montreal is approaching, yet a familiar voice will be conspicuously absent from the commentary team. Joe Rogan, a figure deeply intertwined with the Ultimate Fighting Championship for over 25 years, has publicly stated he will not be present. This absence is not attributed to scheduling conflicts or prior engagements. Rather, Rogan has articulated a definitive position. Canada as a destination is now excluded, citing its terrible government. This declaration, made during a recent broadcast of the Joe Rogan Experience, was not a casual aside. It emerged as a considered statement within a wider discussion concerning international relations and evolving political climates. Rogan's decision to forego travel to Canada for UFC 315 thus transcends a mere logistical consideration. It signifies a deliberate abstention, grounded in explicitly voiced political concerns. Rogan's role within the UFC is not that of a ubiquitous commentator. His presence at the broadcast booth is a carefully curated event. With over 2 decades of association with the organization, his commentary is reserved primarily for pay-per-view events, typically within the continental United States. While exceptions have been made for locations deemed of particular interest, such as Australia, these instances remain infrequent departures from a largely domestic engagement pattern. Therefore, Rogan's absence from UFC 315 in Montreal is not simply a matter of routine scheduling. It deviates from the established norm of his limited, yet predictable, appearances. The stated rationale for this deviation centers squarely on Rogan's assessment of the Canadian government. His commentary during the Joe Rogan Experience explicitly linked his decision to Canada's perceived political trajectory. The discussion highlighted what was characterized as a shift towards far-left policies, a trend purportedly culminating in the events surrounding the trucker convoy. Rogan's critique extended beyond specific policies, encompassing a broader negative evaluation of the current administration. He differentiated between his regard for the Canadian populace, whom he described positively, and his stark disapproval of their governing body. This distinction underscores that his abstention is not directed at the Canadian people, but rather at the perceived political direction of the nation. Consequently, Rogan's refusal to attend UFC 315 in Canada carries implications beyond a personal travel choice. As a prominent figure with a substantial public platform and considerable influence within both the UFC and the wider media landscape, his pronouncements are not inconsequential. His explicit linking of governmental policies to personal and professional decisions regarding travel and event participation introduces a dimension of political commentary into the realm of sports entertainment. Furthermore, his comparative remark, albeit delivered with a degree of levity, that he would rather go to Russia than Canada, serves to amplify the perceived gravity of his discontent with the current Canadian political climate. This statement, regardless of its literal intent, functions as a rhetorical device emphasizing the strength of his negative sentiment. In summation, Joe Rogan will not be providing commentary at UFC 315 in Montreal. This absence is a direct consequence of his publicly declared disapproval of the Canadian government and its policies. His decision, framed within a broader discussion of international relations and political ideologies, transcends a mere logistical matter. It stands as a deliberate act of abstention, rooted in explicitly articulated political concerns, and carries a weight amplified by his prominent public profile and influential position within the UFC ecosystem. However, it is crucial to recognize that Rogan's assessment is not universally shared. While his podcast platform provides a significant echo chamber for certain viewpoints, it is not representative of a monolithic consensus. To position Rogan's stance as an undisputed reflection of reality would be an oversimplification. Counter to his characterization of a uniformly terrible government, proponents of the current Canadian administration would likely point to differing metrics of governance and societal well-being. Economic indicators, social programs, and international standing are potential areas where alternative narratives could be constructed, challenging the unilateral negativity expressed by Rogan. Furthermore, the assertion of a Canadian free fall into far-left policies is itself a subject of ongoing debate and varying interpretations. What constitutes far left is not a fixed definition, and policies labeled as such by some may be viewed by others as progressive adaptations to evolving societal needs and values. The trucker convoy, cited as a culmination of this perceived shift, similarly elicits divergent perspectives, ranging from a legitimate protest against governmental overreach to an unlawful disruption with extremist undertones. Therefore, while Rogan's articulation of his reasons for avoiding Canada is unambiguous, the underlying premises upon which these reasons are based are open to contestation and alternative analysis. His perspective, while influential within his sphere, should be contextualized as one viewpoint within a broader spectrum of opinions regarding Canadian governance and political direction. The strategic implication of Rogan's absence from UFC 315, then, is not solely defined by his personal stance. It also resides in the potential for this absence to be interpreted and utilized by various actors within the ongoing discourse surrounding Canadian politics. For those critical of the current Canadian government, Rogan's decision may serve as a high-profile endorsement of their views, amplifying their narrative and lending it further credence within certain of public opinion. Conversely, those supportive of the Canadian government may dismiss Rogan's stance as uninformed or ideologically driven, thereby minimizing its impact and reinforcing their own position. The very act of Rogan, a prominent figure in a globally recognized sport, publicly linking his professional decisions to his political disapproval of a nation's government, introduces a complex dynamic. It blurs the lines between entertainment, personal conviction, and political commentary, potentially influencing public perception and contributing to the ongoing polarization of opinions regarding Canada's political landscape. A more granular examination of Rogan's pronounced dissatisfaction necessitates a consideration of the specific policy domains that may underpin his assessment. While his commentary references a general drift towards far-left policies and the trucker convoy, the precise elements of Canadian governance triggering such a strong reaction remain somewhat implicit. It is plausible to infer that concerns regarding governmental overreach, particularly in areas of individual liberties and economic regulation, may be central to his critique. The Canadian government's responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, involving mandates and restrictions, elicited significant debate and opposition within Canada and internationally. These measures, perceived by some as necessary public health interventions, were viewed by others as infringements on personal autonomy. Similarly, discussions surrounding freedom of speech and censorship in Canada, particularly in the digital sphere, have become increasingly prominent. Legislative initiatives and policy debates in this area may contribute to a perception of governmental encroachment on fundamental rights. Furthermore, economic policies, taxation frameworks, and regulatory environments are perennial subjects of political contention. It is conceivable that Rogan's terrible government characterization is informed by a broader ideological perspective that prioritizes limited government intervention, lower taxation, and deregulation. In this light, Canada's more interventionist social democratic model, common among many Western nations but distinct from certain of American political thought, might be viewed critically. Therefore, while Rogan's statement is concise and forceful, its underlying motivations likely stem from a constellation of factors. These factors potentially encompass concerns about specific governmental policies, broader ideological divergences, and a prevailing narrative, prevalent in certain media and political circles, that depicts Canada as veering towards an undesirable political trajectory. Ultimately, Rogan's absence from UFC 315 serves not merely as a personal boycott, but as a public articulation of a viewpoint that resonates with the audience. It highlights the increasing intersection of sports, entertainment, and political discourse, and underscores the capacity of prominent individuals to inject political commentary into seemingly apolitical spheres. The incident thus becomes a microcosm of larger societal trends, reflecting the heightened polarization of political opinions and the growing willingness of public figures to leverage their platforms for explicitly political statements, even when those statements pertain to international relations and governance beyond their immediate national context. The repercussions of Rogan's stance extend beyond the immediate context of a UFC event and individual preferences. His pronouncement, amplified by his extensive reach, contributes to the ongoing narrative surrounding Canada's political direction, particularly within certain S of the United States. While the official diplomatic relationship between the US and Canada remains ostensibly robust, Rogan's commentary reflects a discernible undercurrent of skepticism, and at times, outright hostility towards Canadian governance within specific American political and media circles. This sentiment, though not necessarily representative of mainstream U.S. foreign policy, can nonetheless exert a subtle influence on public perception and bilateral relations. In an era where public figures are increasingly expected to articulate political viewpoints, Rogan's action exemplifies this trend. His decision to abstain from a professional engagement based on political grounds underscores the blurring boundaries between entertainment, personal conviction, and political activism. This phenomenon is not unique to Rogan, but his high profile and platform magnify its visibility and potential impact. The politicization of seemingly apolitical domains, such as sports commentary and event attendance, carries broader implications for cultural exchange and people-to-people relations. When travel and professional engagements become intertwined with political considerations, it can create barriers to cross-border interactions and potentially strain cultural ties. While Rogan retains the right to express his opinions and make personal choices regarding his professional engagements, his decision, when viewed through a wider lens, can be interpreted as a form of political boycott. This act, regardless of intent, contributes to a climate where political disagreements increasingly manifest in personal and professional spheres, potentially impacting international cultural and sporting exchanges. Looking beyond this specific instance, Rogan's refusal to attend UFC 315 in Canada may be indicative of a broader trend. It suggests a potential future where political divisions increasingly influence decisions related to travel, entertainment, and international collaborations. Whether this represents a transient episode or a more enduring shift remains to be seen. However, the incident serves as a noteworthy example of how political sentiments, articulated by influential public figures, can permeate seemingly unrelated domains, potentially shaping perceptions and impacting cross-border interactions in subtle yet significant ways. Thus, Joe Rogan's absence from UFC 315 in Montreal transcends a mere scheduling adjustment or personal preference. It crystallizes a confluence of factors: a deliberate act of political abstention by a prominent public figure, a vocalization of specific political grievances against a neighboring government, and a potent illustration of the increasingly porous boundaries between entertainment and political discourse. This instance is not merely about one commentator missing one event. It serves as a concentrated example of how individual actions, driven by explicitly political motivations, can ripple outwards, amplifying existing narratives and potentially shaping perceptions within and between nations. Rogan's choice, therefore, becomes a noteworthy artifact of the current geopolitical landscape, reflecting a world where even the seemingly apolitical sphere of sports entertainment is increasingly interwoven with the threads of political sentiment and international perception. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, and be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more geopolitical insights like this. I love hearing your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Share this video with anyone interested in deeper perspectives on current events. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. Thank you.